500 million light-years away, in the dark heart of the constellation Sculptor, something ancient and violent is still spinning. It looks, from a distance, like a wheel cut from pure light. Vast, radiant, impossibly symmetrical. For 80 years, astronomers believed they had already solved it. Photographed, named, filed away as understood. Then the James Webb Space Telescope turned its infrared eye toward that same wheel of light. What it found underneath did not match the file. The wheel is not the object. The wheel is the wound. So, if the wound has been visible for 80 years, what has been hiding beneath it the entire time? That question already has an official answer. It has had one for decades, and that answer is exactly what is about to fall apart. It even has a name simple enough to sound harmless. Astronomers call it the Cartwheel Galaxy. The accepted account behind that name is almost suspiciously tidy. That name did not come easily. In 1941, the Swiss astronomer Fritz Zwicky found this same shape on his survey plates and could not place it anywhere in his own classification system. Not a spiral, not an ellipse, nothing his science had a box for. He called it one of the most complicated structures still awaiting explanation. Decades later, that explanation arrived, wrapped in a tidiness Zwicky himself never lived to see. Before the wheel, the story insists, there was nothing strange here at all. Hundreds of millions of years before any human eye existed to look up, this was an ordinary spiral galaxy. Rotating arms, a calm central bulge. Nothing remarkable, likely not unlike the galaxy that holds Earth in its outer suburbs right now. Until something hit it. A smaller galaxy, the story says, passed almost directly through its center. A collision. A density wave rippled outward, the way a stone thrown into still water sends rings racing toward the shore. That wave is the luminous outer ring seen in every photograph. The faint, ghostly streaks connecting it to the bright core are called the spokes. Thought for decades to be nothing more than the wreckage of the original spiral arms, dragging behind the blast. Case closed, mystery solved. A galaxy got hit, and now it looks like a wheel. Only one thing kept that explanation alive for more than half a century. Nobody had ever had the instrument required to test it. And even the instruments that came closest had a limit nobody likes to admit. The optical telescopes, even the most powerful ones ever built, could only see the surface. They captured the glow. They captured the symmetry. They never captured what was underneath. And nobody asked the obvious question, what happens to a tidy story when you finally see what it was built on top of? The answer starts with an absence, not a discovery. No matter how many times Hubble tried, one region of this galaxy refused to come into focus. For more than 2 decades, The telescope returned again and again, refining its images, sharpening its exposures, and every single time, the same region remained unreadable. The space between the bright outer ring and the glowing core. Astronomers had a name for that failure: dust. The name sounds like an explanation. It was a warning nobody heeded. In the official images, this region looks like nothing more than fog, an indistinct smear filed away as background noise. But dust is not empty space. Dust is a wall. And a wall like this does something deceptively simple. Interstellar dust, fine grains of silicate and carbon, smaller than smoke, swallows visible light whole. Wherever it gathers thickly enough, it does not blur what lies behind it. It erases it. Inside the Cartwheel, that wall was not a minor inconvenience. It was enormous. The collision that built this galaxy did not just compress gas into new stars along the outer ring. It also triggered supernovae. And supernovae manufacture dust by the ton, flinging heavy elements outward at thousands of kilometers a second, where they cool and condense into solid grains. Those grains drifted inward, settling between the rings, coating the spoke-like structures, burying the core. That curtain was not built from a handful of explosions. It was assembled from a chain reaction of supernovae, violent and numerous enough to coat a region of space, large enough to swallow thousands of solar systems whole, and still keep growing. Which means the galaxy had, in effect, built its own curtain. And for 80 years, every telescope on Earth had only ever photographed that curtain, never what stood behind it. So the real question was never about a ring galaxy. It was this: what does a galaxy look like when the only thing visible is the wound it used to hide its insides? No instrument built before this one could even ask that question properly. One finally could. Then the curtain came down. What replaced it was not a better photograph. The James Webb Space Telescope released its image of the Cartwheel Galaxy, and for the first time in the history of this object, something looked through the dust instead of at it. The trick was never about power. It was about wavelength. Webb does not primarily see light the human eye can perceive. It sees infrared, wavelengths long enough to pass through the very dust that had blinded every previous instrument. Two of its detectors did the work. NIRCam, tuned to near-infrared, cut straight through the obscuring haze and exposed thousands of individual stars that no optical telescope had ever detected. Stars still half buried in the clouds that birthed them, invisible until that moment. Then there was MIRI, Webb's mid-infrared instrument, which did something stranger still. It did not just look past the dust, it looked at the dust directly. It mapped what the dust was made of. What it found inside the so-called empty region between the rings was not emptiness. It was architecture, spiraling structures, threads of material curving outward from the core in patterns that bore an unmistakable resemblance to something the official story said no longer existed. Spiral arms. MIRI did not just see structure, it read chemistry. Specific molecules, hydrocarbons forged in the heart of dying stars, glow at exact identifiable wavelengths near 3.3 7.7, and 11.3 microns, energized by the young stars nearby. Heavier silicate grains glow at entirely different wavelengths, near 9.7 and 18 microns, the signature of material that has been processed and reprocessed for far longer than any of those young stars have existed. That is not a guess about the galaxy's history. That is a chemical readout precise enough to date individual fragments of it, the way a lab dates fragments of bone. Two different chemical fingerprints in two different places, telling two different stories about when each piece of this galaxy was actually made. Which meant the spokes were never random debris. They were the skeleton of the galaxy that used to be here, the original arms, broken and distorted by the collision, but never fully erased. Webb detected silicate dust inside them, the chemical signature of old, processed interstellar material, the kind that takes a mature galactic disk to manufacture. Material that predates the collision by a vast margin. This is the detail the old story missed entirely. The Cartwheel Galaxy is not a ring that replaced a spiral. It is a spiral that never finished dying, two structures occupying the same physical space, layered on top of each other like sediment, recording two different eras of the same galaxy at once. And if the after and the before are still tangled together like that, how much of what astronomers call the Cartwheel Galaxy is actually something else entirely, wearing this shape like a mask? That mask has more layers than the first image revealed. Most people who have seen this galaxy have seen one ring. There are two. Start with the one everyone recognizes. The outer ring is vast, luminous, and 440 million years after the original impact, it still has not stopped expanding. 440 million years, and the blast wave is still moving outward as if the collision happened yesterday. It is a detonation front, not a static structure, a wave of compressed gas still racing through the galaxy's remaining fuel supply, igniting new stars by the billion as it goes, and every massive star it creates is, by stellar standards, already dying. Some will exhaust their fuel and explode in a span of time too short to register on any geological clock humans use to measure their own planet. Even the simple question of how fast that wave is moving does not have one answer. Optical spectroscopy puts its outward velocity at roughly 90 kilometers per second. Radio observations of neutral hydrogen put it closer to 54. Two different methods, two different numbers, both measuring the same expanding wall of compressed gas, and astronomers still have not fully reconciled why. But closer to the center, tighter, brighter per unit of space, sits a second ring almost no one talks about. The inner ring formed in the opening instant of the impact, a localized, violent compression where the intruder first struck. While the outer ring is the long, slow consequence still unfolding across hundreds of thousands of light years of disrupted galactic material. Between these two rings is where the official story falls apart completely. This zone is not empty space waiting to be filled. It is debris. Stars knocked out of stable orbits, tracing chaotic paths instead of the calm circular motion every healthy disk galaxy depends on. gas either swept into the rings or funneled toward the center, leaving the in-between hollowed out, structurally disordered, an archaeological dig through the ruins of a disk that does not exist anymore in any organized form. And the thing that did this, the intruder, did not stay. It did not merge. It did not settle into the core. It crossed through the disk of the original galaxy at enormous speed and kept going, vanishing back into intergalactic space, leaving behind a wound shaped exactly like the weapon that caused it. A hit and a run. The case has a victim. The case has a method. It does not yet have a confirmed suspect, and the search for one only widens the scene of the crime. It widens because the Cartwheel Galaxy does not exist alone. 4 galaxies share this neighborhood, bound together by gravity. And the distances between them are so vast that the gap between any two could swallow every planet, moon, and asteroid in this solar system without anyone noticing the difference. The Cartwheel is the dominant member of that group. One of them, a disrupted bluish galaxy trailing faint signs of recent star formation, is the leading candidate for the intruder that tore through the Cartwheel's center hundreds of millions of years ago. Attention has not been kind to every member of this group. A second companion sits even closer in the frame, smaller, quieter, almost an afterthought in most descriptions of this system. It has received far less scientific attention, mostly because attention has been fixed entirely on its brighter, more disrupted neighbor. But it is still there, still gravitationally bound, still part of a 4-body system locked in a slow, ongoing exchange of tidal forces that will keep reshaping all of them for hundreds of millions of years to come. Radio observations have found something that makes this candidate even harder to dismiss. A faint trail of neutral hydrogen gas stretched out like a filament, physically connecting the Cartwheel to this companion. A bridge of stripped material, exactly the kind of evidence left behind when one galaxy punches through another and drags fragments of both away with it. It looks like a confession written in gas. It is not a confirmed one. Tidal interactions between group members can produce similar bridges without any direct collision at all, which leaves the case exactly where it started. 80 years of study, and astronomers still cannot say with certainty which of the 4 galaxies in this group is the one responsible for what happened to the Cartwheel. And the hydrogen data holds one more detail that should unsettle anyone who assumes this story is finished. The total amount of star-forming gas remaining in the Cartwheel is lower than it should be for a galaxy of its original size. Whatever fuel it had before the collision, a significant share of it has already been burned, converted permanently into stars, into stellar corpses that will never give that material back. The galaxy entered this event with a full tank. It has been running on a deficit ever since, spending reserves faster than anything could ever refill them. And a galaxy running out of fuel does not slow down quietly. It changes what it produces. What it has been producing at the center of all of this should, by every normal rule of galactic behavior, be quiet. It is not. The old explanation called this galaxy healed. A collision survived, a shape settled into. The data calls it something else, still bleeding, still active, and in at least one specific way, worse than the tidy version ever admitted. Webb's instruments revealed a thick, glowing shroud of heated dust wrapped tightly around the Cartwheel's nucleus, the unmistakable infrared signature of an active galactic core. A supermassive black hole being actively fed. For comparison, the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy that contains Earth is right now essentially dormant. It carries by itself roughly 4 million times the mass of the Sun, and yet it accretes so little material that it produces almost no detectable radiation. By cosmic standards, it is asleep. The Cartwheel's black hole was woken up. The collision did not just rearrange the outer disk. It scrambled the orbital stability of gas throughout the entire galaxy, and a portion of that gas lost its angular momentum and began spiraling inward, a process that does not happen quickly. Material migrating from the outer disk to a central black hole can take hundreds of millions of years to complete the journey. Which means the active core glowing in Webb's images right now is not a reaction to anything currently happening. It is being fed today by material that was violently dislodged from its orbit before the wave of the original impact had even finished crossing the galaxy. A delayed consequence, arriving on a schedule measured in geological epochs, still being processed by a black hole that has had nearly 500 million years and still has not finished digesting what was thrown at it. The core is not the only place where the numbers stop behaving. Out along the outer ring, the Chandra X-ray Observatory detected an abnormally large number of point sources blazing far brighter than anything a normal stellar object should produce. Ultraluminous X-ray emitters, the signatures of collapsed stars, neutron stars, and stellar mass black holes. Pulling material from companion stars at rates that, in some cases, exceed the theoretical limit at which radiation pressure should physically stop material from falling in any further. The math says this should not be possible. It is happening anyway. The reason traces back to the same collision. The shockwave did not create a normal population of new stars. It skewed the outcome toward the most massive, most violent, shortest-lived stars the laws of stellar formation allow. Stars that exhaust their fuel and detonate in a few million years instead of billions. Which means, in this one ring, something happens that does not happen in ordinary galaxies, birth and death occupying the same place at the same time. New stars igniting along the wavefront in one location, while older stars born from the same burst just tens of millions of years earlier are already dead, collapsed, and now radiating X-rays as they devour their neighbors. The timeline of stellar life and stellar death has been compressed into something that should not fit inside a single structure. It fits here anyway, and a galaxy whose internal clock no longer runs in order is not a galaxy anyone can claim to fully understand. Not understanding it gets worse the moment the scale of it is taken seriously. The light arriving at every telescope pointed at the Cartwheel Galaxy tonight left that galaxy 500 million years ago. 500 million years before this image existed, Earth had no complex multicellular life. No forests, no vertebrates walking on land. The continents themselves were arranged in shapes no human map would recognize. That is how old the light is. The Cartwheel Galaxy described in every line of this video does not exist anymore, not as it appears in any photograph. It has had 500 million additional years to keep tearing itself apart since the light now reaching Earth left its surface. Whatever it has become, no instrument on this planet, or any planet, has ever seen it. Every discovery in this story is not a discovery about the present. It is a forensic reconstruction of an ancient injury built entirely out of light that is already 500 million years out of date. And the wound itself is on a scale that resists comprehension even before time enters the picture. The outer ring alone stretches roughly 150,000 light-years across. The entire galaxy that contains Earth, 400 billion stars, a spiral disk over 100,000 light-years wide, could be placed inside that single ring, with room left over on either side. Say that again, slowly. An entire galaxy, 400 billion stars wide, swallowed by a single ring of light, with room left over. That is not a galaxy. That is a container large enough to swallow a galaxy whole and still have space to spare. And it is not stable. It is not finished forming. It is not, in any sense, astronomers can currently defend, recovering. NASA's own release described this object as being in a very transitory stage. A sentence buried in a paragraph about beautiful infrared colors, easy to read past, easy to forget. It should not be forgotten. A transitory stage that has already lasted 400 million years and shows no measurable sign of ending is not a phase. It is closer to a condition. A condition does not resolve on a schedule anyone can predict, and this one has no clean resolution in sight. Two forces are currently fighting for control of what this galaxy becomes, and as of this moment, neither has won. The first is residual rotation, the leftover spin of the original disk, still trying, against everything that has happened to it, to pull the wreckage back into the shape of a spiral. The spokes are evidence of this attempt, shattered arms still tracing the curved paths their ancestors followed before the impact, refusing to fully dissolve. The second is the expanding density wave itself, the force still driving the outer ring outward, still consuming what little gas remains, still working directly against any attempt at reformation. Models cannot agree on which one wins. One outcome, the wave eventually exhausts the gas supply and fades, and the galaxy slowly, painfully, reassembles something resembling a spiral. Scarred, gas-poor, carrying the chemical fingerprint of this event for the rest of its existence. A second outcome, the gas runs out too completely, and the galaxy settles instead into a quiet, starved, lenticular shape, a disk with no arms left to lose. A third outcome should be the most unsettling of all. The group this galaxy belongs to is compact. The companions are close. If another encounter occurs before the wreckage from this one has settled, and nothing currently rules that out, the Cartwheel may never get the chance to recover at all. Each new collision, resetting the clock before the last one, has finished playing out. That is the part the old, tidy explanation never accounted for. It described a galaxy that had already survived the worst of it. The data describes a galaxy that might not have seen the worst of it yet. This galaxy is not even unique in its uncertainty. It belongs to a known but exceedingly rare class. Across every galaxy, ever catalogued by every telescope on Earth. Fewer than 1 in 1,000 will ever take this shape. Which means almost everything else humanity calls a normal galaxy has simply never been hit like this, including others like ARP 147 and the Lindsay-Shapley ring, each one a snapshot of a different stage in the same kind of violence, at a different point along the same unfinished timeline. Which raises the question no model has answered. How many more of these are out there right now, still hidden behind their own dust? And how many have already been photographed, filed, and forgotten as something far gentler than what they really are? There is one more reason that question cannot be set aside as someone else's problem. It is not a story about something distant. It is a preview. The galaxy that contains every human life that has ever existed is on a confirmed collision course with its neighbor, Andromeda, closing the distance at roughly 250,000 miles an hour, fast enough to cross an entire continent in under a minute, and still take 4 to 5 billion years to arrive. 4 to 5 billion years, a span of time so long that by the time it happens, the sun itself will already be swelling toward the end of its own life. The outcome will not be a ring. The mass ratio and the angle of approach are wrong for that particular shape of catastrophe. Instead, the two spirals will merge entirely into a single galaxy astronomers have already given a name: Milkomeda. But the underlying physics, the disrupted orbits, the forced bursts of star formation, the sudden feeding of dormant black holes, the destruction of a structure that took billions of years to build. All of it is the same violence the Cartwheel is living through right now. 500 million light years and 400 million years into its own unfinished collapse. Webb did not solve the mystery of the Cartwheel Galaxy. It removed one layer of dust and found another structure underneath, older, stranger, less finished than anyone expected, and left the rest of the case exactly where it was: open. "500 million light years away, in the constellation Sculptor, a wheel of light is still turning. It is not at rest. It was never at rest. It has been falling apart in extraordinarily slow motion for 400 million years, and it will keep falling apart for hundreds of millions more, long after every telescope currently watching it has been replaced, forgotten, or turned to dust itself. What looked, for 80 years, like one of the most beautiful objects in the sky, was never a finished picture. It was a single frame, taken in the middle of a collision that has not ended. And somewhere above, right now, indifferent to whether anyone is still watching, it is still turning. If a story like this changes the way someone looks at the sky tonight, that reaction is worth sitting with for a moment. Somewhere out there, behind a curtain of dust nobody has looked through yet, there is another one of these, another wound mistaken for a jewel. Another case file marked closed that was never actually closed. What do you think is hiding in the next one? If you want to be here when it's found, the like button is the simplest way to help more people come across this. And subscribing means the next curtain that comes down in front of you first.